For those of you who don't know who that is, Piers Morgan is a fat idiot, and he is primarily a journalist located somewhere in the UK. He has a very strong English, makes him look like the absolute buffoon that he is. And so Piers Morgan is kind of Andrew Tate's arch rival in a sense, I would say. Now, I only watch this guy because of Andrew Tate, but lately I've been watching some of his other interviews because he has started to interview other people that I follow, such as Nick Fuentes and Brett Cooper. And then today, so I actually watched 2 episodes of his show today. Today he interviewed both Sophie Rain and the potential new governor of Florida, James Fishback. And then in the other episode that I watched is when he interviewed Clavicular. So I want to talk about the first interview that I saw, which was Piers Morgan hosting a debate between James Fishback and Sophie Rain. Now it was basically 3 idiots all fucking agreeing with each other, but I never thought I would see the day that I would actually defending Sophie Rain. Well, I'm technically not defending her because I still believe that Sophie Rain is a complete fucking idiot. But to break down what happened in the argument, James Fishback basically proved exactly why he should not run for governor. He proved that he is in fact not going to win. Matter of fact, at the end of the interview, Piers Morgan and James Fishback have Piers's choice and vice versa. So it seems that Fishback's only major concern is banning OnlyFans from the state of Florida. And while I don't agree with OnlyFans at all, I have stated in previous podcast episodes, banning porn of any kind or banning any kind of media other than child pornography is extremely unconstitutional. Because part of living in the free country is that we can watch whatever we choose to watch, regardless if others think it's sinful or wrong or inhumane. Ron DeSantis, I've also covered this previously, but Ron DeSantis previously banned Pornhub from all of Florida, which I would argue has actually made our OnlyFans problem worse. Because before he banned Pornhub, at least if you wanted to be a porn addict, you weren't spending money on it. But if Ron DeSantis wants to ban Pornhub, the #1 porn site and best working porn site in the country, people are either going to go to other porn sites with countless ads and are much noticeably much harder to use, or they're going to buy OnlyFans. Now, this is what I've noticed. I don't study the pornography industry very thoroughly, but what I have noticed is that Pornhub and OnlyFans are the 2 primary porn sites on the internet. So when they got rid of Pornhub in many states throughout the US, people immediately went to OnlyFans. And the problem is, when you're a fucking addict, they don't care about money. So yes, they're spending money on OnlyFans and destroying our society in the process. Now, James Fishback, honestly, he gives me the vibes of that one bitch principal that everyone hates and everyone can't fucking stand. I mean, he is extremely bigoted. He is extremely hypocritical. Several times in this interview today, he proved that he's a fucking liar. Most recently, this wasn't featured in Piers' show, but most recently, there's a clip of him going around on the internet where he tells a black person to go get lynched. Now, for context, this black person went up to him, and the black person was not necessarily unfriendly or aggressive or anything of that manner. But the black person said to Fishback that he needs to stop basically raping little girls. He accused Fishback of being a child rapist. To which Fishback clapped back. He angrily clapped back, "You should be hung and you should be lynched," and said all these graphic things, racially graphic things. And in a country where I think that was the way to go, if you want is voting for a candidate, they're not looking at their negatives, they're looking at their positives. Being a fucking racist is not a positive. They're going to say it's the general public is going to look at it and they're going to say a hostile man that's out of control. And an argument that Fishback has made in the Piers Morgan show is that, well, everyone thinks that Piers is not gonna, so not Piers, Fishback is not gonna win. And people said the same thing about Donald Trump back in 2016. Well, here's the thing. Donald Trump is an educated businessman, and that's why he runs this country so well, because at the end of the day, a country is a business. And Donald Trump, while many people have accused him of being racist or similar things, now, Donald Trump has been accused of being many things, including a child rapist, both behind his back and to his face, and he always handles it calmly. You accuse Fishback of something like that, and he loses his mind and tells you to get lynched. I swear to God, I cannot stand this man. Every single time I see his fucking face on my screen, I can't help but think that is the face of an evil, bigoted man. Now, one of the lies that he said throughout the interview is that, oh, I'm going after OnlyFans because, it's harmful to our society and it's sinful and I'm not going to have sin in my state. And he's like, I'm not going after any particular person. But wait, hang on a second, hang on. The entire thing that started this campaign was him publicly going after Sophie Rain on Twitter. He quite literally tagged her in his post, said her name to the camera, and has been relentlessly going after her non-stop. But then on the Piers Morgan show, he says, oh, by the way, I'm only going after, I'm not going after anyone in particular. I'm just going after people who consume pornographic material, whether it's on OnlyFans or on other sites. Now, even if he becomes governor, let's keep in mind, doesn't matter where you stand in politics, we live in the United States of America, which is a constitutional republic. Not democracy. A lot of people like to say it's a democracy. We don't live in a fucking democracy. We live in a constitutional republic. We, the people, are in charge. Congress and the president and all these political figures, they only have as much power as we give them. Even if James Fishback did become the mayor, governor, which is fucking impossible, he cannot just put a 50% sin tax on everything. First of all, he is forcing us to oblige by a certain religion, which is unconstitutional. But also, he doesn't own OnlyFans or any of these other sites. You can't just come in like some king. Like, so many politicians think they're the king. They think they can just snap their fingers and everything they want will be so. That's not how it works. He can't just, if he bought OnlyFans, that would be different. But he can't just say, okay, I'm going to tax you 50%. That's what King George would have done if he was still ruling this country. That's what a fucking dictator does. James Fishback is a wannabe dictator, not a politician, not a governor. He is a dictator. And I'd like to point out, he is actively trying to decide what is sinful and what is not sinful and how we should be punished for our sins. But only God can punish us for our sins. Matter of fact, I would argue that Fishback and Lucifer have a lot in common. Because the whole story of Lucifer is quite literally Lucifer wanted to be God. Lucifer wanted to choose how people got punished. Lucifer, in trying to play the part of God, became the devil. And that's exactly what Fishback is doing right now. He's trying to take matters into his own hands. He's trying to tell you and I what we can and cannot do with our lives. He's trying to tell us what is sinful and how we should be punished for it. And let's talk about that whole tax thing. He says that he wants to tax us 50%, a 50% sin tax, and that he's going to use that tax to up the pay of teachers throughout the country. Oh my God, is this guy an agent of the fucking Matrix? We do not need more taxes in this country. We need significantly less taxes. Taxes now are higher than they were back when England was still ruler of this nation. And instead of throwing a modern day Boston Tea Party, The Gen Z youth are lazily sitting around jacking off to Pornhub and playing fucking Call of Duty and meaningless video games, working at a job that will get them absolutely nowhere in life. Our taxes are higher. People can't even afford to fucking eat. Homelessness is going up and up and up. Humanity is suffering. And what is Fishback's solution to that? Let's tax the people more. We're going to charge them a sin tax and we're going to charge a teacher pay. Oh, because teachers are paid so little, really. Because last I checked, an entry-level job like Burger King or a waiter or a waitress or a grocery clerk or you name it, basically any entry-level job, basically any minimum wage job pays significantly less than fucking teachers. Matter of fact, I personally know a school teacher, a kindergarten teacher who lives in Jacksonville. And she's made quite a bit of money doing so. Matter of fact, being a teacher of any kind, whether it's a college professor or academics or a school teacher, they earn quite a lot of money. It is one of the highest paying jobs in America. So James Fishback is clearly just another agent of this corrupted system and an industry plant designed to keep us grounded and keep us silent and keep us under control. Now that being said, I don't agree with Sophie Rain at all. I've stated this numerous times before, and I'm gonna say though, she did make a few valid points throughout the argument. And she basically has this whole attitude of like, hey, I've become a millionaire. Who the fuck are you to say, oh, we're gonna take that away? Because it seems that James Fishback isn't doing this really for the betterment of our country, but rather for his own selfish reasons. He framed this as, oh, women are being enslaved by OnlyFans, I don't like that we are being enslaved and women are being forced to. No one's being enslaved. No one is being forced to do everything. He's saying women need to live up to a higher potential where they can be lawyers and astronauts and doctors. No. Women can have potential, sure. You can get a job as a waitress or a nurse or an entry-level job. Please, God, no. Do not let a woman become something as risky as becoming a doctor. And I don't even have to argue why women should not be lawyers, because literally every female lawyer has managed to make a fucking fool of herself, because women focus all their attention on their bipolar emotions that fluctuate on a day-to-day basis, fucking hour-to-hour basis. Women are pathetic creatures of stupidity. They physically cannot become astronauts or doctors or lawyers or anything great for that matter. That being said, if you want to live up to your potential, there are plenty of other things you can do that are not so demanding and risky. And by the way, that whole astronaut thing, astronauts aren't real. The moon landing was completely fake. It was completely staged. The evidence is all over the fucking internet. So astronauts are a work of fiction. So that's unrealistic. Nobody is being forced to do OnlyFans. Nobody is being enslaved by OnlyFans. They are quite literally choosing to do this. And this is exactly why people in the OnlyFans industry are so hated, because it's not like you just woke up one day and you were forced to do OnlyFans or whatever. It's so many of these creators like Sophie Rain, they choose to become porn stars. They choose to become pedophiles and exterminate young women like Piper Raquel and others. They choose to then develop this I'm better than you ego, acting like, oh, I'm better than you that because I make more money than you, but I have a lower IQ than you. They choose to do dumbass shit on TikTok for views. They literally choose to be these arrogant, brain-rotted pricks that they are. Which is why they're so hated. It's not because if they were forced to do it, people would be more sympathetic. But because they quite literally choose to do this, this is why they are so hated. So, I'm watching this interview, and within probably the first 15 minutes is when James Fishback was stating, oh, women are being enslaved by OnlyFans and they're being forced to. If you're going to make such a stupid statement, you've already lost the election, and that is exactly why he's going to lose this election. Ain't nobody fucking voting for his ass. You can look at the voter polls. He's a fucking dictator. He is super hypocritical. There is genuinely nothing likable about this guy. And him telling a black guy to go get lynched, you just sealed your fate, dude. Like, let's face it, we still have some time before the election happens, so there is still some time for James Fishback to repair his political reputation and make a turnaround and possibly defeat the odds. But by him going up to a calm black man and telling him you should be lynched in an angry and hostile tone, mind you, this is not joking, this is not a comedy skit, this is him literally getting hostile on the spot and being racist and telling a black guy that he needs to be lynched. You just sealed your fate, dude. Every single supporter who was originally going to vote for you is now not going to vote for you. I would bet my life on it. Matter of fact, let's make a bet right now. If James Fishback wins the election, I'm going to take a knife through my fucking throat. So now I'm gambling my life on the line. That is how confident I am that James Fishback is going to lose the election. I am betting my life on it. And if by some sheer will of Satan he manages to actually win and become the dictator of Florida, I will slit my throat on camera. So mark my words, James Fishback will not win this election. Now, Piers is largely clowned amongst the internet because he's quite stupid. Matter of fact, he recently walked off his own show. So, for context, basically, while Piers was in the hospital, his wife cheated on him, and it became a whole thing on social media. His wife posted something about a pool boy on her Instagram, and people have been clowning Piers nonstop because Piers often debates red pill, right-leaning conservatives such as Andrew Tate, Nick Fuentes, and whatnot. Something that you'll hear Andrew Fuentes, Myron, especially myself say, is that men and women cannot be friends. If you have a girlfriend and she's going out to hang with her guy friends, you need to understand that that is not some typical hangout like she does with her girlfriends. That is a hookup happening behind your back. There's a fly in the room. But that is a hookup happening behind your back. And a lot of men have been manipulated into believing that they're supposed to just let it happen. And if they have no standards, if they have standards, it's them being insecure. That's not being insecure. It's called having respect for yourself. Because let me ask you this. Why is it that so many girls are not okay with guys having girlfriends? That's two words, girl, friends. But when a girl has guy friends, the man is expected to just go with it. Let me ask you something. If your girl can go hang out with any guy, even if they're not hooking up, you don't fucking know that. But let's just, for argument's sake, let's just say she's not hooking up and she's genuinely just going to other guys' houses or restaurants or hanging out wherever, and they're just talking, watching TV, whatever, and they're not doing anything sexual. First of all, that guy is fucking gay, because why the fuck are you hanging out? Like, are you telling me you're gonna place a beautiful woman in front of me and I'm not gonna try to bang that shit? Yeah, you're fucking gay. But secondly, what is even the fucking point of being in a serious relationship if everyone can have her? You know, a while back, a friend of mine got into an open relationship. You know, he originally told me that he was in a relationship, and then I saw him talking to some girls, and I said, dude, don't you have a girlfriend now? And he says, it's an open relationship. And I said, so then what the fuck is the point of being in a relationship then? I've never understood that. Open relationships, oh, we're in a relationship, but we can see other people, we can fuck other people. Then just be platonic friends with benefits then. What the fuck is the point of open relationships? I don't get it. That's the point I was getting at, though. But Piers Morgan quite literally walked off his own show because he got rage baited so hard by the person he was interviewing about this whole situation with him and his cheating, hoe, skank, lying ass wife. And Myron Gaines brought this up on his YouTube channel and brought up a valid point, something that we're all thinking, is that at the end of the day, even these left-leaning, blue pill, liberal men, even they have their limits. At the end of the day, no man wants his woman to be a fucking hoe. No man wants to see his woman constantly being promiscuous around other guys, feeding attention into other guys. I'm gonna tell you right now, there are girls that I talk to with boyfriends, and I already know, like, I can already tell that their relationship is not gonna last. Like, I'll be sitting with my best friend and one, we'll be watching TV, and he'll be like, hey, aren't you friends with this one girl? I'll be like, yeah, I talk to her on occasion. He's like, you know she has a boyfriend now? Yeah, that's not gonna last. Well, why do you say? Why do I say? Because she still talks to me. And I noticed she follows other guys on Instagram as well. If she was actually taking this relationship seriously, she would cut off and unfollow or block every guy on her Instagram, Snapchat, etc., including myself. Why is it that I can text her right now and she'll text me right back? If she was actually serious about this relationship, she would cut me off, and she would cut off other guys as well. Perfect way to test if your girl is loyal or not. I'll make you an offer. Send me a DM, have me DM your girl. If she responds, I'll tell you if she's loyal or not. Because I can tell if a girl is loyal or disloyal if I'm talking to a girl who's in a relationship and then she's still interacting with me or still talking to me. And mind you, I'm someone who's universally hated in my city because of the exact same things that I'm saying on this podcast right now. So for a girl to go out of her way to actually engage in a conversation with me, I'm going to tell you right now, that is a next level hoe. Because first of all, why are you talking to another guy when you're already in a relationship? But secondly, you're going out of your way to converse with someone who is widely hated amongst the internet and around his city. And, you know, I think I have more enemies than I do friends at this point. And you're still going out of your way to talk to me. Yeah, you are ho final boss if final boss had a final boss. But to summarize, yeah, Piers Morgan walks off his own show, and now he's getting clowned on the internet because he had to come to Sophie's defense multiple times on this episode because Sophie has a 0 IQ. She's a fucking millionaire, I know, but she has a 0 IQ, and she has the mindset of a fucking 2-year-old, and she can't really make logical debates. So Piers had to come to her aid multiple times. And so many people, such as Myron Gaines and others, are clowning Piers for basically defending a hoe. However, despite the fact that I agree with them that Piers is a fucking clown, I have to come to Piers' defense in this case, because he actually made a valid point to James Fishback. Sophie Rain is not doing anything wrong in the sense that she's physically hurting people, other than the fact that she's a fucking pedophile because she's been hanging around with Piper since she was 16. But that's a subject for another episode. Matter of fact, if you go back and listen to my previous episode, I've already covered that subject. But generally speaking, taking Piper out of the question and basically taking everyone from Sophie's inner circle out of the question, Sophie Rain is making her own content. She's doing it completely legally, minus the whole Piper Raquel thing. She's not doing anything necessarily hurtful to other people. And James Fishback is trying to say that what she's doing is illegal, what she's doing is wrong, which many people will agree with. However, most people who are going to agree with it are coming from a religious sense. So if you're religious, if you believe in Christianity, you're going to believe that OnlyFans and pornography and that sort of thing is wrong. Even I, I'm not fully Christian, but even I believe it's morally wrong. However, I also understand that it's not my place to do something about it in the sense that I need to dictate the way other people live. People have the freedom. The beauty of Christianity and also the beauty of America is that people have the freedom to do what they want to with their lives. It is up to you whether or not you want to associate with those people or not. So, if you can't stand OnlyFans chicks, don't watch their content, don't associate with them. It is that fucking simple. My only critique, so once again, I'm siding with Piers in his defense on Sophie Rain. So, like I said, for once I actually agree with Sophie Rain and Piers Morgan. My only critique is that Sophie Rain proved that she's an idiot as well, because she should have been the one saying all this shit to James Fishback, but instead she had to rely on a man to defend her. Let me point this out. The woman who claims that she doesn't need a man needed a man to defend her on a podcast interview because she was so fucking stupid she couldn't defend herself. Now, at the end of the interview, when they made that bet, Piers Morgan said, okay, well, let's bet $10,000 right now that you're going to lose this election. And bro, Piers and Fishback went back and forth for what feels like at least 20 minutes, because Fishback is so unconfident that he's going to win that he originally didn't want to make the bet. He finally made the bet at the very end of the podcast episode, but there was so much back and forth. And I think the reason for that is because Fishback knows he's going to lose, because you can hear the uncertainty in his voice. He knows he's hated. He knows he's in the wrong. He knows he doesn't make any fucking sense. He knows he's the one who's actually immoral by trying to be a dictator and trying to decide that he wants to play the part of God and he wants to decide how people should be punished. He knows he's a fucking agent of Satan and Satanism and a devil worshiper. And that's why he didn't want to bet. Because if he was so confident, let me ask you something right now. If this was Trump back in 2016 or back in 2024, if someone said bet $10,000 right now that you're going to lose, he would have said, all right, bet, you're going to make me richer. Bring it on. And people like myself see this as well. We see the lack of confidence. We see the lack of uncertainty. And it makes us not want to vote for these people. So yeah, that whole podcast interview was just three idiots fighting each other. Now, the whole thing with Piers Morgan interviewing Clavicular, there's really not a whole lot that I could take away from this, because they were just talking about looks maxing and gesture maxing and all these brain-rotted terms that I 100% don't agree with. But there were some things that I can't agree with. Now, this is the beauty of podcasting and debating, is I found that you can agree with your enemies from time to time. This is the thing about human nature. No two people are completely different. However, no two people are completely alike. You're going to find differences between you and your best friends, and you're going to find similarities between you and your greatest enemies. Piers Morgan and Sophie Rain are two people that I largely disagree with for the most part. However, today I found myself agreeing with them on a lot of things in that podcast interview. Similarly, Andrew Tate is someone who I idolize, and I also agree with people like Myron Gaines and Nick Fuentes. However, I recently have been calling out Myron and Tate for associating themselves with Clavicular, despite the fact that Clavicular is a complete opposite of their teachings. And matter of fact, I've gone further into this by making an entire podcast episode where I listed specifically 10 people that I agree with for the most part. And the goal of the episode was to find at least one thing that I disagreed with them on and why I disagreed with them. You have to be willing to agree with your enemies when you see that they're right, and you also have to be willing to disagree with your friends or your idols when you realize that they're wrong or that their views do not align with you. It's part of being human. When you just blindly disagree or agree with someone because you hate them or you like them or you idolize them or they're your friend or they're your enemy, you become a sheep. That's the sheep mentality. That's the sheeple mentality. Just going along with the crowd. Oh, you hate this man? Well, I'm your friend, so I'm going to hate him too. Oh, he actually makes a very valid point. However, I don't like him, so I can't agree with that. Sheeple mentality. You need to be able, this is the ability that I have, and probably my most valuable asset. You need to be able to put your emotions aside and see things for how they actually are. And then base your own opinions off of the facts. Not your idols, not your feelings or your beliefs, but the facts. And that's what I do. Now back to the whole thing about clavicular. So they're talking about, looks maxing and, the process of it, like bone smashing your fucking face and whatnot. And what's funny is that Piers Morgan and clavicular, I wouldn't say that they necessarily agreed, but they got along for the most part. When Piers Morgan interviews people like Fuentes and Tate, they're quite noticeably constantly clashing. It's very confrontational. This is the part where Clav and Morgan disagreed. So Clav, to begin the episode, started off with Morgan, which I agree with Clav on this. Once again, agreeing with an enemy, not saying that Clav is necessarily my enemy, but he's someone that I largely disagree with. However, I'm going to agree with him on this point here. Clav pointed out that Piers Morgan often tries to publicly shame people for clickbait, and he basically will take information that you yourself have put out there. So, for example, if Piers was interviewing me, he would research me and look at the stuff that I've said, stuff that I've posted, and then he will repeat it back to me or play it back on his show and basically try to twist my words and twist my narrative to make it seem as if I am saying something that I'm not, or make it seem like I am someone who I'm not. And matter of fact, I have clipped parts of his shows where he has done this, and I've uploaded those clips to my Instagram, so you can check that out if you want to see what I'm talking about. So Piers' argument is that he is not trying to, there was a term that he used, I can't remember, but basically he was trying to say that that's not what he does to people, that, it's not necessarily clickbait, that he's just reiterating, like he's literally just repeating back to people what they themselves have said, which is only partially true, because I have watched quite a few episodes of Piers Morgan Uncensored, and I myself can confirm that while he does repeat things that you actually said, he also does have a regular habit of putting words in one's mouth, or twisting words, or twisting the narrative, or saying things completely out of context without telling the full story to try and make it seem like you're a completely different person, or like you said something completely different. So yeah, the Piers Morgan Uncensored podcast is basically one giant clickbait jester show. So Clav and Piers basically agreed to disagree. They keep talking, and then Piers brought up the whole incident between the Tate brothers, Nick Fuentes, Justin Waller, Myron Gaines, Ronaldo, and Clavicular, where they were all in the back of a van singing along to Kanye's Heil Hitler, which, we all know the incident that happened with the club in Miami, and everyone got banned, and it became a whole controversial thing. Some, like Nick Fuentes, doubled down and said they did nothing wrong. Others, like Andrew Tate, tried to get rid of the heat and said that, like, hey, I didn't play that song, which both sides of it have very valid points. For example, Nick Fuentes makes a very valid point in saying, like, hey, we didn't do anything wrong. It's not illegal to play a song just because a certain religion finds it offensive. Andrew Tate also makes a very good point. Him being the side that's trying to reduce the heat, he also makes a good point by stating that, hey, I was just in a car and someone who had the aux played the song. I had no control over this situation. So they both make very good points. I would argue that both sides are right and neither side is necessarily wrong. Clavicular is not a political figure. He has stated this repeatedly. And he mentioned in this podcast that he didn't want to talk about politics with Piers Morgan. He wanted to talk about looks maxing. Apparently, Piers' PR team had emailed Clavicular's PR team that they were going to talk about looks maxing, and there was nothing regarding the whole Hail Hitler thing or politics or anything of that matter. And Piers, this is literally at the beginning of the episode, Clav basically said, you just want clickbait and you're trying to attack people for views. And then Piers, after saying that he doesn't do that, proceeds to attack Clav by saying, oh, by the way, what's this going on with you and this Heil Hitler stuff? What do you want to say about it? Do you want to apologize? He literally asked him if he wanted to apologize. What is there to apologize about? I'm sorry for playing a song that you found offensive. What the fuck? What the fuck? So, yeah, so Piers actually ended up proving Clav right, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. Piers constantly clowning himself on his own show, from walking off his own show to literally being called out and then proving the debaters right. I mean, let me just point something out. I don't watch, originally, I didn't watch Uncensored because I was necessarily a fan of Piers Morgan. I watched Uncensored because of who he interviewed. Not because of the podcast host himself, but who he interviewed. Now I don't watch him often, but I occasionally watch Uncensored because it is quite literally a comedy show. I find it absolutely hilarious. And I find it hilarious because Piers Morgan, in every single episode, manages to make himself look like a complete and utter stupid idiot. He's a fucking idiot. It's a fucking comedy show. So, jester maxing is a term that Clavicular uses, where basically you're entertaining a woman basically being a simp, and she's not showing any interest in you, and so you're entertaining her, but she's not entertaining you, jester maxing. Piers Morgan is a jester. He's jester maxing his wife, he's jester maxing his entire audience. Piers Morgan is the ultimate jester maxer. Now, going into the whole Hail Hitler thing, so they kind of just, after a kind of heated moment, they moved on, and then towards the end of the episode, Piers Morgan, in a very sneaky way, brought up the Hail Hitler thing again, and he mentioned, which is a question that I've had as well, Clavicular doesn't seem to have a lot in common with Andrew Tate, Myron Gaines, Nick Fuentes, these kind of people, so why does he hang out with them? And this is a question that I have brought up on my own podcast, not in the sense of, oh, why are you hanging out with them, but in the sense of, why do these people support him when Clav represents everything that they stand against? So Clav brought up the point that, I just collab with people because it's good for my brand, it boosted my popularity, and he's 100% correct in that. Because before the Hitler incident, I didn't know who Clavicular was. I would argue that the Hitler incident is what made Clavicular famous. And fast forward, it's only been, what month are we in? April? It's only been 4 months since the Hail Hitler incident. And Clavicular isn't really remembered for that. When people talk about Clavicular, they don't really talk about that incident anymore. However, it was that incident that ultimately boosted his popularity to the maximum. So yeah, he's 100% right in that. Collabing with people is what made him famous. And he said before that he'll collab with anyone, whether they're right-wing, left-wing, he doesn't really care. And that's really obvious because he collabs with idiots all the fucking time. It's very obvious that he has no standards. In that aspect, at least. But yeah, Piers Morgan was just trying to very sneakily sneak that in there. And Piers Morgan claims to be conservative, but he is so liberal because an actual conservative wouldn't care about a Heil Hitler song. I mean, for fuck's sake, well, it's been 4 months, but I think that episode came out back in February. That being said, over a month later, and Piers Morgan is still bringing it up. 4 months later, and people like Piers Morgan continue to bring it up. And it's like, bro, let it go. I've been saying this since that incident happened, because our Jewish fucking bitch of a mayor down in Miami, he got on the news, and let me just improvise here. Hi, I'm the mayor of Miami. There's a drug problem, there's a crime problem, there's a prostitution problem. We're the capital of OnlyFans. But hey, I don't care about any of that stuff. You know what I care about? Some influencers who voted for Trump played Heil Hitler at one of the clubs in my city that I do not own. They didn't hurt anybody. They didn't antagonize anybody. They said we played a song, but I found it offensive because I chose to be Jewish. And because I chose to be Jewish, well, I'm offended, and I have a right to be offended because I chose to be Jewish, and I'm gonna bitch and complain, and I'm gonna ban them from Miami, and fuck Andrew Tate, even though he didn't play the song, and fuck everyone in that group, even though Sneeko was the one who played the song, and fuck everyone for enjoying themselves and having a good time and not finding offensive. Fuck everyone for not being a Jewish bitch like I am. That being said, they've been banned from every club in Miami. They've been banned from every restaurant in Miami. They cannot enter this city. I don't know if that's true or not. Pause. I don't know if you could actually... I'm still researching that. It's very unclear if you could actually ban someone from entering a city. I understand there are trespass laws and you can trespass someone from whether it's a club or restaurant, supermarket, wherever. I don't know about the whole banning thing, but apparently these people are now banned from entering Miami. Okay. So back to improvising. Anyway, I've basically taken care of the problem that I myself created by banning them from the city and getting them banned from every major club, and they're now no longer, like, half of them aren't even in Florida anymore. Anyway, a week later, I'm going to keep talking about this instead of fixing our housing issue and our pricing issue and our drug problem. Bro, that's basically the impression I have of the mayor. And people like that are exactly why the Jewish community gets so much hate. Because Jewish people, for the most part, are just whiny little bitches. They just whine and bitch about everything. And it's like, bitch, you literally chose this. It's the same concept with the fucking OnlyFans thing. Why are OnlyFans girls hated? Because they literally chose to be the people they are today. And here's the thing, people probably wouldn't care if these porn stars just did their porn and then minded their own business. But no, these porn stars gotta do their fucking porn and then go on the internet and say, oh, men are trash, men are so pervy, men are creeps. Well, no shit, that's who you're fucking selling to. Jewish people whine and complain and bitch about everything, and then if you make fun of them in any which way, shape, or form, that's anti-Semitic, you can't say that. You play a Heil Hitler song, it's anti-Semitic, you can't say that. Japan's not whining about getting nuked, they're not whining about Pearl Harbor, US isn't whining about fucking 9/11, which happened, when was that? Fucking 24 years ago? I might be a little off on that. But back in the 1940s, the whole Nazi regime happened, and the Jewish people are still fucking whining about it. It's like, bitch, you literally chose to be Jewish. It's not like being born black or being born white. Certain things you can't control. You can't control what gender you are. You can't control what race or heritage you are. You can control what religion you are. So how are you going to actively choose to be this religion and then constantly whine about it? Excuse me. Just don't be Jewish. It is really that fucking simple. Just don't be Jewish. Just like I say to black people who do whatever the fuck they want to, and then they complain that, oh, there's so much racism. Just don't be a fucking criminal. Just don't be a fucking degenerate. Don't be a fucking criminal, and all will be fine. Jewish people, stop whining about everything, or don't be Jewish, and your problem will be solved. If you're one of these girls posting promiscuous things on the internet, be it pornographic or not, and you're complaining that men are constantly creeping on you, then don't post it. Matter of fact, Meadoweeds, a Tallahassee local, has been complaining that men are coming up to her asking to eat her ass, and she's, like, offended by it. Well, have you considered not dressing like a fucking hoe? Bro, she wears these shorts that I swear are, like, this fucking thick. Guys are gonna assume you're a hoe, and they're gonna try to hit. She wears these fucking shirts that end, like, they're probably the size of my fucking phone. It's like this. Oh. Motion light works now. It's like, well, you know, if you dressed more conservatively and more modestly, you wouldn't have this problem. Or at least you wouldn't have this much of a problem. And here's the thing, Meadow East constantly whines that she's not a fucking hoe. when in reality, she is the biggest hoe in this entire city. She is more of a hoe than the regular hoes just going around about their business, just sleeping around or whatever. Like, here's the thing, and she constantly wants like, oh, I'm not a hoe, I'm not a hoe, I'm not a hoe. Here's what I've learned. The women who constantly shame men and call men creepy and claim that they hate men and claim that they're not hoes, they are actually the biggest hoes of all fucking time. Sabrina Carpenter is a prime example of this. She constantly shames men and calls men creeps and shames men. Yet if you go to her concert, she's literally in thongs. She's literally in lingerie. She does the Juno poses where she does various sex poses, including the Eiffel Tower, with men. And then she has the audacity to say, oh, all men are perverts. Yeah, this is why no one takes you seriously, bitch. This is why people prefer Olivia Rodrigo over Sabrina Carpenter, because Olivia Rodrigo does her fair share of shaking ass and wearing thongs and looking hot as fuck when she sweats her ass off. But she's not over here fucking complaining endlessly about, oh my god, all men are creeps. This is why people go to Olivia Rodrigo and not you. This is why you and Olivia Rodrigo can't be friends. This is why no one fucking takes you seriously, because you're a fucking hypocrite. But if there's one thing that I want you to take away from this episode today, it is the fact that human life is not just black or white or good and evil. Humans are very complex and advanced, and so there are, as I've stated in this episode, I think this episode is a prime example of how you are able to disagree with your friends or idols and agree with your enemies at times. Thanks for listening. This is the Adonis Podcast.